320 miles of range, a 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, driver assistance, Volvo quality, Google technology, dual screens, and more, starting under $50,000. That's the all-new 2024 Polestar 2, and today I'm reviewing this car. It has a lot to love and has stiff competition, competing directly with the popular Tesla Model 3 and new Hyundai Ioniq 6. I'm going to break down the good and bad of this car, compare it to the Model 3 and more, so let's get into it, and a special thanks to FE Battery Metals for sponsoring a portion of this video. Polestar is a Swedish automotive brand, acquired by Volvo in 2015 with the aim of being an all-electric offshoot of Volvo. Today they are standalone and owned by Geely, but the Volvo design language still very much runs through their cars. They have been growing fairly well and just made their 150,000th Polestar 2. Soon as well, they plan to make the Polestar 3 in the popular crossover SUV shape. Outside, the Polestar 2 is a beautiful vehicle. The more and more we push electric vehicles on efficiency, the more sacrifices have to be made with styling. Depending on who you ask, the bubble shape of the Model 3 or Ioniq 6 isn't too appealing, but the Polestar 2 maintains an elegant look. It's a great looking vehicle that happens to be electric. It has 4 doors with completely normal handles, a charge port on the rear driver's side that opens by pressing on it, a reasonably useful front trunk, and a hatchback. Up top, there's a full glass roof, and this manages to be completely uninterrupted with no beam down the middle. The Model 3, for example, has a beam here that splits the roof into 2 parts, so this provides a better view as a rear passenger. It doesn't allow for much more headroom though, and we'll get there in just a bit. Up front, the updated Polestar 2 has a much different look, with its faux grille being replaced with a panel full of driver assist sensors. I personally prefer the new look and appreciate the lines on the hood. The front lights turn on in sequence, and then the coolest look of this car to me is the rear light bar. This also turns on in sequence when unlocking, and it gives it a very distinct look. Some interesting design details about this car are that the Polestar logo is all over the place, but the word Polestar is rather hard to find, hidden inside lights and such. Up top is the most interesting Polestar logo. It's actually projected onto the glass roof from inside, and while very cool, it's rarely actually seen. Another is the side mirrors. Typically when adjusting, mirror housings remain fixed, while the mirror inside moves around. In this car, the entire mirror housing itself moves. For wheels, this car has the performance pack. So we have the 20-inch wheels with distinct Polestar yellow calipers and air caps. They look really great. To me, this car looks like a really nice car, and it's electric. For some, that's exactly what they want, as opposed to others that are screaming, "Hey, I'm electric!" To get inside, the Polestar comes with a normal Volvo-style key fob. It's rather large and has 3 buttons on it. In addition to this, Polestar includes a key tag that has the same function of unlocking, locking, and starting, but doesn't have any buttons. It is also waterproof to a certain degree. Polestar also has a phone app that can work as a digital key. This app also allows for remote climate start, checking in on range, and locking or unlocking, amongst other things. Features-wise, it's a functional but fairly limited vehicle app compared to others. Inside, the Polestar 2 is a great combination of new technology and comfortable vehicle controls. Up front are 2 comfortable seats with very cool yellow accent seat belts matching the rear seats. Front seats have adjustments that can be saved with buttons on the driver door, and they definitely went with a clear cockpit setup here with a center console that ascends towards the center screen. And while it looks cool, I actually found that it made it feel a bit cramped for my knees. I'm 5'10", and my leg would definitely be resting against this panel most of the time as a driver. In back, there are 3 seats in a very regular configuration. These can be folded for cargo space, and the center seat has a fold-down armrest, as well as a pass-through into the trunk that Polestar specifically says is for skis. The seats are comfortable, but here's where the glass roof comes into play. One of the great benefits of the glass roof in a Tesla Model Y or Model 3 is that all seats benefit in regards to headroom. You can get a tiny bit more headroom even as the roof is sloping, since there's just a piece of glass there instead of a whole interior. In this car, the roof is one big piece, but actually ends right before this benefit, so I was actually pretty uncomfortable in the back. Riding on either side, my head would just be pressed up against the top and side interior pieces that take over right after the glass roof. This was a bit disappointing and would mean that anyone my size or taller would actually find this unbearable on long drives, most likely. But that brings us to cargo space. The Polestar 2 has a good amount of storage, but lacks in a couple of areas. First is the center console. Due to the nature of this console, you only really have a tiny bit of storage in the closed cup holder. Below the main screen is a wireless phone charger. It faces away from you, which is great for safety, and then the right side has a couple USB ports. Below that are buttons for media, your shifter and parking brake button, a cup holder, and then underneath the armrest is a second cup holder. One cool thing about this cup holder in practice is that you can fold that lid all the way back when there's something there, but for storage, the console doesn't provide too much. Up front, you'd use the glove box, which is definitely large, the side door pockets, and the pockets on the lower sides of the center console. In the back seats, you have side door pockets and seat back pockets, but the real storage comes thanks to the automatic hatch. I love hatchbacks because of the versatility that they offer in smaller vehicles. The trunk space is decent. There is a strap on the left for holding items, a net on the right in sort of a side cubby, and then there is an interesting divider shelf built into the trunk. You flip it up and this stays up strong, which could help you keep items in place that you don't want rolling around. Then you lift this whole lid and there's a decent understorage compartment. This will also help with objects that you don't want rolling around. My one complaint here is that this entire lid lifts up to access this storage, and it reveals more than you actually would use in practice. Folding at a halfway point makes this better and easier to lift when there is other cargo in your trunk. You'll also notice the built-in cargo shelf that lifts when opening the hatch. When you want more storage than this, you can fold the rear seats nearly flat and have a full pass-through to the front seats. This opens up a ton of cargo possibilities in such a small vehicle. The front trunk is actually pretty good on the Polestar 2 as well. This one came spec'd with a divider to house the charger and road kit. My main complaint though is that this is released just like a normal hood. There's no button on the keys, so you release the hood manually inside, press the latch, and open the hood. It's definitely not inviting to be used on a regular basis compared to other EVs that prioritize usability of the front trunk. This is more of a set it and forget it storage location, since I don't want to regularly be opening and closing a traditional hood. In the rear, there are handles and overhead lights in the headliner, and then vents, USB ports, and heated seat buttons on the back of the center console. These are all pretty normal feeling and contribute to this car feeling a lot like a normal car instead of a futuristic fancy EV. Up front, the Polestar has a very typical Volvo-style steering wheel with buttons on it and a fully manual adjustment latch. There are buttons on the doors for windows, mirror adjustments, and child locks, 2 stalks with various controls, a media knob with a couple other buttons, and the main shifter. Aside from that, everything in this car is controlled on screen. One button you'll notice though is particularly absent, which I'm thrilled about, is the start-stop button. This is a useless button in well-made electric vehicles, and the best electric vehicles from Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, and more have eliminated this button since there is no engine to start. You're able to just get in and drive. Then when you park, just leave the car and it turns off for you. It may take a little getting used to when coming from a gasoline vehicle, but you'll never miss it. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, FE Battery Metals. To start with, keep in mind this is not investment advice. In the last few years, there has been a growing bull market in Quebec lithium stocks. In the past 5 years, 4 companies have seen huge returns, one at 384%, one at 243%, one at 219%, and another at 592%. The North American lithium mine is the only operating lithium mine in Canada and has begun production. While all of that is happening, FE Metals has been acquiring land near this area for when others decide to expand in this region. FE Battery Metals Corp is focused on identifying, exploring, and advancing early-stage lithium pegmatite projects in Canada. They currently hold over 60,000 acres in Quebec, along with other exploration projects located throughout North America. Essentially, they're getting in early with the idea that this land could be more valuable in the future. The Quebec government is targeting $7 billion in investment in the lithium battery sector this decade, where FE Metals is working. BASF and GM have announced facilities, and it's expected to keep expanding. So if you're interested in this market, check out and research FE Battery Metals for yourself. Regarding the sound system, Polestar uses a Harman Kardon system that they say, quote, shares our uncompromising, minimalistic, detail-oriented approach to design and performance. Naturally, their custom Polestar 2 sound system takes immersive in-car audio to the next level. I listened while streaming over Bluetooth and actually was surprisingly underwhelmed. Maybe connecting via CarPlay USB would help with streaming quality, but I didn't find the system to be much to write home about. It's good and better than many cars, but not a standout for me. The main screen is a great 11.2-inch display integrated into the dash, and I actually found the software to be pretty easy to use. It's fairly self-explanatory, which typically isn't the case for vehicle software, aside from companies like Tesla these days. One advantage this car has over a Tesla, though, is the gauge cluster display. This is a dedicated display showing your main driving info right above the steering wheel or through it, allowing the infotainment screen to be dedicated solely to infotainment. First up, let's check the screen out on the Polestar. Overall, the interface is actually pretty useful and very simple, so I think it's something that's very easy to get a handle on. And the screen is fairly responsive. It's not like this is the best refresh rate ever, but it's definitely better and more responsive than others. Even the Rivian sometimes is pretty delayed in the screen once you tap something, and this I haven't had any issues with so far. So this is what the home screen is like. Your music here, your phone, your maps, and your range information at all times. Right now, I'm charged up to 90%, and this is saying over here that it estimates a 240-mile range, whereas this is saying 190-mile range, which is a little interesting. But then I go to Maps here, and we can see it's a pretty good Google Maps setup. This is basically just the normal Google Maps phone app that I'm used to, and it's just on a bigger display. So this is very useful, very good map system built in right here, and I think they went the right direction just by integrating Google Maps right away. So we click this car here, and then we have Drive, Assist, Charge, and then More. And these are your basic settings and everything having to do with driving. So steering feel, I'm keeping it on light, which I would assume is fairly similar to comfort on the Tesla. And then for one pedal driving, I can either have it off, low, or standard. I always recommend standard or high. Whatever level of one pedal driving you can have that allows you to not use the brake is my personal favorite. And I also turned creep off. But if you want those things, you want this to feel like a normal gas vehicle, those options are there. Over in assist, this is everything having to do with driving assist. And one thing I think is kind of cool is not only does it have adaptive cruise, but it has normal cruise control. So there are some situations where adaptive cruise might not work super well, certain weather, certain other situations where you just want to use normal cruise control. And this actually has both, just normal dumb cruise control if you want it. Lane keeping aid is on. Collision avoidance, I can choose early, standard, or late for that warning. And then road sign information and other stuff having to do with driver assist features. For charge, I kind of like the way this works. You can just drag it to all the different 10%. It's actually a pretty nice slider right here, and then you can change your charge amperage if needed. This is also where you would schedule your charging at home to do it during off-peak hours. And then under More, there's the car status, which will tell you if anything is wrong with the car. Currently, all is good with an exclamation point. Locking, I can choose options for locking, interior lights, exterior lights, mirrors, and wipers all right here. Then up here we have apps, so I can get to Maps, YouTube, there's a performance app, there's Google Assistant, Range Assistant, air quality, which is pretty cool because it will show me what the air quality is inside, an actual reading, along with what is outside and what pollen I should maybe worry about, also what pollutants are around. Tesla has great air filtration, but they don't give you this data, so you don't necessarily recognize that it's actually happening. Here's where I could connect Apple CarPlay or my phone in a different way. And then for music, the built-in things are Bluetooth media player, radio, and then Sirius XM. Just a couple more things on this screen, and then we've seen most of it. Up here on the left are the cameras, and it gives us a 360 view if we want it, an overhead view, which is great to have. And then you can open up the individual cameras if you prefer to just look forward, back to 360, just look back, all that stuff. This overhead view is something I think all cars should have at this point, and it's great to see on this car. If you get any notifications, you can access those by swiping down from the top. And then your climate controls are actually always at the bottom right here. And I can change heated seat if I want, or heated steering wheel. I can go to manual, change the temperature, change it this way if I prefer, or swipe up here, and then I have all of my in-depth climate options. So they've definitely taken a Tesla approach here, simplifying the buttons. There are still more buttons than a Tesla has, but overall it's a pretty good balance here. And then this has the gauge cluster display. So while this may be smaller than a Tesla display and doesn't have quite as many options or displays, they don't have to put the driving info right here because it's all right in front of you. And right now I have a great maps display up. There's lots of different options for the gauge cluster as well. Everything we've talked about so far involves practicality and your use of this car day to day. That's very important when making a vehicle purchase, but at the end of the day, especially in this price range, this car better be fun to drive. And the Polestar 2 delivers.
So
I have one pedal driving enabled. Let's see how usable it is. Coming up to a stop here. Ooh, yeah, great. That is a really great one pedal driving system. Regen braking is essential for electric cars, but some don't quite nail it to where it's truly usable as one pedal driving. And so far this car definitely does. It definitely gets strong enough. For blind spot, I'm noticing it does have a blind spot monitor on each side mirror, which is great to have. I always like having the option of a camera if available, and I don't think this car has that, but at least it does have that pretty standard mirror. So Polestar is basically Volvo's split-off electric brand, and this definitely feels like a Volvo. There are certain aspects like the steering wheel, which this is basically just a Volvo steering wheel with a Polestar logo, and a lot of it feels great. This feels up to date, and it feels very nice and premium in here, but it feels a little more like a regular car than a Tesla does, but it's not quite feeling old in that way. Sometimes there's electric cars that are doing that balance of taking the old style with a lot of buttons and not changing much, but just changing the way it runs. And for some customers that is great because it's not that much of an adjustment for them versus going to a Tesla feels like a spaceship and a totally different thing. I think this kind of gets a balance in between the two really well, and I could see a lot of people liking this one a lot. So there are a few different gauge cluster displays. Right now this is the most simple one, which, talking left to right, is gear, speed limit, speed, and then right now when I'm stopped there's actually just a big blank in the middle, and then there's charge and power, and it's showing me 88%, and then as I drive it's gonna show me in that power meter. There's also the odometer at the bottom, and then the range in miles displayed right there. But the cool thing is this button right here on the steering wheel changes it to a bunch of different views. So this is my maps view, then my speed moves over to the left, and my power and charge moves over to the right. So this car is competing directly with the Model 3, and then now probably the Ioniq 6. And I haven't driven the Ioniq 6 yet, but this is definitely a better ride than the Model 3 if you're just going for comfort. People will prefer different things, but if you're simply going for the best, smoothest ride quality, this is riding smoother than a Model 3 does. Overall, inside, it just feels very comfortable in here. All right, I'm gonna flip around, and then let's give it some power here. Let's see what this can do. Woo! Yeah, that's almost a little stomach dropping. If you're looking for a fun performance car, this is definitely gonna deliver. And steering is actually pretty tight. I'm gonna go ahead and try out a different steering mode here. Or maybe let's try out firm. See if we can really notice. It's pretty responsive. There's a little bit of give. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bumps on this road, and it's absorbing everything really well. There's a certain threshold for electric cars when the 0 to 60 time doesn't really matter anymore if you're not trying to race. I think this definitely falls into that category where technically you can get a faster 0 to 60 on other electric cars, but this is definitely plenty of power for what you might need day-to-day driving, and it's enough to be a lot of fun. So now I'm on the freeway. Let's do some self-driving features here. There's a button right here. This has put me in pilot assist, and I can feel the steering wheel, and it gives me a little, actually pretty clear visualization right there that it is steering for me. It's doing a good job here. Right here, this is something that certain cars struggle with, the merging lane, and it's actually doing a great job just keeping me left where I should be. Doing a great following distance from the car in front of me. If I want, I can make this distance further or closer with the adjustment right here. And then I can up my speed, and it actually is doing it in increments of 5. I'm going to turn on my blinker. Great job there. Okay. And now I'm back. Oh, and it went right back into it. That's really great. So I steered out of it, changed lanes myself, and then as soon as I was back centered in the lane, it reinitiated this system. I think it's actually doing better than a lot of brands do at telling me what's going on. The icons are really clear on the bottom there, and then it just told me to hold the steering wheel. So much like Tesla systems, Rivians, Lucids, all these companies that require a little bit of steering wheel feedback to ensure that you're actually paying attention that way, this is doing the same thing. So that's pilot assist, but I can flick over here and I can turn off pilot assist so that it's just adaptive cruise control. It's just accelerating and braking for me, and then I'm completely handling steering. Both of these systems so far are working great. The only real way to know these on a large scale is to drive them hundreds of miles. But as far as I'm concerned, the most often used case is going to be on the freeway on long drives, and this is doing a really great job. Now to exit it, I'm going to guess I just pressed the cruise button. There we go. Yeah, that was a great job by the self-driving systems included in this. All right, now I'm just gonna see if I can navigate back here. Now when I'm navigating, it's giving me my next turn right there, which is pretty useful because I have the overview right over here and then my next direction at all times right there. That's something you definitely can't have in a car with only one center display. And then as I mentioned before, I can press this and now I have more of an overview maps view. So I'm getting maps both over here and over here in pretty much the same thing. It's just dark mode and light mode over here. All right, let's give some power going up onto the freeway. Woo! Yeah, this is a blast. That's one thing with electric cars sometimes is like the 0 to 60 is great and then it falls off. But this is doing a great job. Let's go at 70 and then just punch it. You can still absolutely feel that punch. This car used to be in kind of an awkward segment where it was like, it's cool, but it's slower, less efficient, has less range, and is more expensive than another option. And now it's got that increased range, it's got better motors that are more efficient and faster, and the price has come down. So this is really becoming a great option, especially now on the charging front, that they are partnering with Tesla for superchargers, which basically all major automakers in the US are now starting to do. As soon as you need to take this car anywhere, even though you've spent a lot of money on this car, you're gonna have trouble finding third-party charging, and it's probably gonna be stressful. But soon enough, we should have an adapter for this car to be able to charge at superchargers, and then in 2025 or so, this car is gonna change to Tesla's North American Charging Standard connector. That alone makes these cars way more competitive. I think this gets me more excited than a lot of other EVs out there coming out because it's got the compact package and it's done really well. Most cars we're seeing are crossover SUVs, and this does have a hatchback, so it has a lot of functionality there, but it's still very much a compact car, and it's a blast to drive. One small complaint is when going into reverse, the rear camera, I understand it can't go any wider, but it's just a little small, and that's because of how this display is smaller. So that's where a horizontal screen might be nice for certain things like this. Those driver assist features I was using worked great, and this is part of Polestar's Smart Zone system, which enables blind spot information system with steering support, cross-traffic alert with brake support, rear collision warning and mitigation, and their 360-degree surround view camera that we saw. So let's talk specs. The 2024 Polestar 2 starts at $49,900 in the US. This is their long-range single-motor option, and while it is rear-wheel drive, it delivers a lot. It has a 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds, and the most important piece, a 320-mile EPA range. This is a big improvement over previous years, which had the Polestar's top range around 270 miles. Now it can get up to 50 miles more range on a charge, and that's huge for many buyers. Up from there, Polestar offers the long-range dual-motor version for $55,300, which brings the 0 to 60 down to 4.3 seconds and the range down to 276 miles as well. So you get a power and functionality increase with less range. After that, when adding on the performance pack, you get various interior upgrades, upgraded wheels and performance software, upgraded chassis tuning, and more. This is the configuration we're reviewing today, and it does a 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. Worth noting here though, it does drop the range to 247 miles. So if range is your priority, the rear-wheel drive might actually be the best option, even though it's the cheapest. As far as tax credits go, the Polestar 2 qualifies in certain configurations in the US and certain buying methods, but isn't qualified across the board. In years past, this car may not have looked that enticing. It had a higher price, lower range, and less options than a Tesla Model 3, but Polestar recently refreshed this car. It brought that improved range by way of more efficient and powerful motors and better batteries. 0 to 60 improved and charging speed improved to 205 kilowatts. They also added their new Smart Zone for driver assist, which adds a front-facing camera and radar, heating wires, accelerometers, and ultrasonic sensors. These can clearly be seen on the front of the car, and it's a bold design choice clearly showing you the features that this has. Overall, the Polestar 2 delivers across the board. I think it's a great combination of a traditional vehicle feel, luxury, and a well-made electric vehicle. The electric drive is fantastic, and now so are the specs. Soon enough as well, Polestar will have access to Tesla's supercharger network, so charging will be much easier than it is now, and this car can charge up from 10 to 80% in as little as 28 minutes according to Polestar. I think it's a great electric vehicle and I'm very happy to see it. Big thank you to Unstoppable Automotive Group and Polestar South Coast and Costa Mesa for letting me borrow and review this car. In the meantime, if you want to see my full review of a close competitor to this car, the Tesla Model 3, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.